well and truly at bay, but it will move in across.
Policeman murders 3 in Belfast, then kills himself. The Assistant Chief Constable blames the stress of the job. Mr. Kinnock and Mr. Major trade fresh blows over the economy. The face of the most wanted man in Britain. And why this car is more expensive here than on the continent. Good evening. A Northern Ireland policeman who held the Queen's Commendation for bravery tricked his way into a Sinn Féin office in West Belfast today and shot 3 men dead. He then drove off and killed himself. Tonight he was named as 24-year-old Constable Alan Moore. A senior RUC officer blamed the stress of the job for what happened. The 2-year-old son of one of the men who died was in the room at the time but wasn't hurt. 2 other people were, one seriously. Security at the Sinn Féin office was tight, but the policeman pretended to be a journalist and talked his way into the building on the Falls Road. The attack coincided with 2 pre-arranged events across town. The President of the Irish Republic, Mrs. Mary Robinson, in Belfast for the day, was at the Law Society at the time. And outside the City Hall, there was a big demonstration against terrorism and intimidation. The policeman's body was found later beside his car, 15 miles away from Ballinderry.
It all happened in a crazed few seconds. Police say the off-duty officer entered Sinn Féin's press and information centre, then opened fire. He used a shotgun and some of his victims were blasted at close range. 3 men died, another is seriously ill in hospital. The dead were named tonight as Patrick McBride, Michael O'Dwyer, and the elderly doorman Patrick Loughran. Sinn Féin officials at the scene first of all said 2 gunmen were involved and claimed they had said on the video entry system they had come to carry out a pre-arranged interview. Gerry Adams, the Sinn Féin president, was one of the first at the scene. Under normal government restrictions, his voice can't be broadcast, but he was speaking in a personal capacity as an eyewitness.
By that time, some of the people wounded and killed had been removed, and there was 1 man there who died within seconds of me arriving. There were shotgun cartridges on the floor.
According to police, the tragic chain of events started in this churchyard late last night. The constable, who was said to be drunk, fired shots over the grave of a colleague buried yesterday following a domestic shooting. The policeman was arrested and his service revolver was confiscated. Instead of reporting to police for a medical examination this lunchtime, he was here with one intention: multiple murder. It all ended on the picturesque shores of an Ulster loch. The constable parked his car, then killed himself using the shotgun. During the bloodshed and confusion in West Belfast, the Irish president was visiting the city centre and was informed of the deaths at lunchtime.
I've only just heard the news, and I am obviously very distressed by it, and very distressed by any death by violence. It seems to run counter to what I've been seeing and sharing in and enjoying so far here in Belfast, but it is very distressing and very upsetting.
Political reaction was swift.
That terrible sickness that's here, that awful violence, that obscene violence that is encroaching on every part of the entire community, and the despair that that is inducing, I think, has been crystallised in this instant today.
All members of the security forces in Northern Ireland are under considerable stress because of the terrorist campaign. We also have to say that there's been a fairly significant level of suicides amongst RUC men and UDR men over the years, an indication of stress.
Tonight, police chiefs said they believe on the facts available that the police officer was the only gunman. They said he was medically examined last night and was later released into the care of a colleague.
The police officer was counselled immediately after the incident. He was then released into the custody of a trusted colleague. He was then spoken to the next morning by a senior officer, by his senior officer. It is impossible for me to give any rational explanation as to the constable's behaviour.
Sinn Féin is making no comment tonight. At the scene of the shooting a short time ago, a sad, familiar scene in Ulster, flowers laid near the spot where men were murdered in cold blood. Andrew Simmons, News at 10 in West Belfast.
As President Robinson's motorcade drove into Belfast this morning, the talk was of peace and of reconciliation. She is fulfilling the pledge she made at her inauguration of stretching out a hand of friendship to Northern Ireland. Her meetings with women's groups and the Equal Opportunities Commission were designed to show her personal commitment to healing divisions.
I think there is great potential for linking between women's groups here in the north and in the south, for broadening our whole sense of it. And also I think there is an opportunity to exchange warmth and friendship.
But Mrs Robinson's position as head of a state that makes a territorial claim to Northern Ireland earned her one snub from Belfast's Unionist Lord Mayor, who refused to meet her.
She comes as president of a country, the Irish Republic, which under its constitution lays claim to Northern Ireland, that claim being a constitutional imperative, which gives encouragement to the IRA.
And while Mrs Robinson talked inside Belfast Chamber of Commerce, outside trade unionists were on the march to protest the continuing round of killings and bombings. They gathered outside the City Hall to hear speaker after speaker condemn the kind of sectarianism that led to 8 Protestant workers being blown up by the IRA near Cookstown just over 2 weeks ago.
And we say to all those who perpetrate violence, you have no place in our society. You have no right to take the lives of innocent people. You have no right to massacre innocent people because they are Protestant or Catholic workers providing for their families.
But even as the rally ended, news came through of the Falls Road killings, the day which saw a president and the ordinary people set out their hopes for a peaceful future, ended tonight with more bloodshed and more fear on the streets. Jim Buchanan, News at 10, Belfast.
Conservative backbenchers have tonight been telling the Chancellor, Mr Lamont, what they want in the budget, 5 weeks today. Earlier in the Commons, Mr Kinnock attacked ministers for causing the worst recession since the 30s. Mr Major said that was economic illiteracy. He cited recessions in other countries.
Tonight, the Chancellor set off for his annual pre-budget get-together with Tory backbenchers. He listens, they tell him what they want. Or this year, how to win the election.
I think we should cut the basic rate because we've made it clear that we want a 20p in the pound rate of tax. And this would be a first step along that road.
I don't know that we should think it was a penny off the base rate. I think it may well be on thresholds, for example.
In fact, at tonight's closed-door meeting, the Tory tax cutters seem to have it, even though a poll for tomorrow's Financial Times of 107 Conservative MPs shows, among those making the choice, 52% wanting tax thresholds raised to 43% wanting tax cuts. At Prime Minister's questions, an angry set too. John Major pointed to what he sees as recession worldwide, when Neil Kinnock accused him and his cabinet colleagues of causing the recession.
Did we cause it in the United States, in Sweden, in Japan, in Australia, in New Zealand? If the right honourable gentleman believes all that, then he is certainly not capable of leading his party, let alone this country.
Mr. Speaker, there is no question of doubt that this government caused the recession in Britain. This government caused the recession, they continued the recession, and now they haven't got a clue how to get out of the recession.
The battle done, the Liberal Democrats said it showed how the traditional Tory-Labour hold-on power solves nothing.
Well, I think John Major's fingerprints are well and truly on this recession, but the point Neil Kinnock misses is that this recession is just the latest instalment of a whole series of failed economic policies that have really gone back over the last 40 years.
The Tories know that the opposition parties will strike and strike again at the government's handling of the economy and the recession from now until polling day. And that is why government sources were seeking to suggest today that whereas during the last big recession, 79 to 81, output fell overall by some 16%, they say that during this recession, output's only fallen by some 7%. But those same sources also know that new figures that are about to be published are likely to show that the recent growth in the economy has been even slower than the Chancellor predicted in his autumn statement. Michael Brunson, News at 10, Westminster.
Labour's economic team told EC officials today that a Labour government would sign up for the European Social Charter, which Mr Major rejected at the Maastricht summit. The Shadow Chancellor, Mr John Smith, Treasury spokesman Margaret Beckett, and Employment Shadow Mr Tony Blair were in Brussels to present their European policy to EC Commission President Mr Jacques Delors.
Visiting 3 European capitals in as many days, Labour's economic team made clear today their approach to European Union would be in the fast track. They arrived in Brussels to announce that if in power, they would sign up to the social policy changes agreed by Britain's partners at Maastricht. In December at the summit in Holland, John Major won the right for Britain to opt out of any further extension of EC powers into social policy, as well as on European monetary union. But today, Labour said the government had been naive.
The empty chair policy of the Tories will be disastrous for Britain, our industry and our employees. It will shut us out from shaping the social aspects of Europe and deny millions of British employees the rights and benefits that will be available in all other European countries.
The greeting from the Commission President Jacques Delors was singularly warm, although he wouldn't comment on the prospect of dealing with any future Labour government. The Social Affairs Commissioner Vasso Papandreou, though, was more forthright.
It is that it will be better for Europe to have all the 12 taking decisions about all the issues, because we want a Europe that all the conditions apply to all the members.
With the Maastricht Treaty due to be officially signed later this week, Labour were clearly keen to make their mark in Brussels today. Their main campaign message that what the Conservatives considered were concessions in the treaty are in fact agreements which leave Britain on the sidelines. Libby Wiener, News at 10, Brussels.
The two police forces hunting the kidnapper of the Birmingham estate agent Stephanie Slater have now issued an artist's impression of him. It was drawn after Stephanie had given several interviews. The man is thought to be about 5 feet 7 inches tall. Detectives said he may be a railway enthusiast because of a train motif on his coat.
Tonight, over 1,000 telephone calls have been received in the main incident room from people who think they may know or have seen the country's most wanted man. This is the face of the man detectives believe kidnapped Stephanie Slater and probably murdered Julie Dart. For days, a female artist has worked with Stephanie to assemble this likeness. But police believe the black-frame spectacles may have been part of a disguise. With the help of ITN's computer graphics, we can reveal what the kidnapper would look like without them. He's described as between 40 and 45, 5 feet 7 tall, with short, dark, brushed-back hair. The man leading the hunt today described the picture as excellent and praised Stephanie's powers of recollection.
She's a quite remarkable young lady, really, in that she's got an excellent recall. She has, during her period in captivity, as it were, set herself to remember what she can at every opportunity.
For most of her 8-day ordeal, Stephanie was blindfold, but she clung to the memory of her first meeting with the kidnapper as they met outside this house for what she believed was a genuine viewing of the property. The ordeal ended after a courier was instructed by telephone to drive to the Barnsley area and follow signs before dumping a £175,000 ransom onto a disused railway line. This amateur video of Leeds teenager Julie Dart, who police believe was murdered by the same man, has never before been made public. Since the killing, he's contacted the police to taunt them about what he calls the game. Tonight, Julie's mother studied the artist's impression of him and predicted it would lead to his speedy arrest.
This is what we've been waiting for. A picture to the man who's done it. This will definitely catch him. It should do.
Detectives have another clue. Stephanie's kidnapper was wearing a black coat of duffel coat material, which on the breast pocket had a motif of a train similar to these. Both cases under investigation have links to railways, and one theory is that the hunted man is a railway buff. As the calls from the public flood in tonight, detectives will piece them together to see if it's a lead or a very clever diversion. Terry Lloyd, News at 10, Birmingham.
And as Terry reported there, police have set up 2 special phone numbers for anyone who thinks they recognise the face in the drawing. The first is for West Midlands Police in Birmingham. It's 021 200 2552. That's 021 200 2552. And the second is for West Yorkshire Police in Leeds. It's 0532 444 711. That's 0532 444 711.
The Monopolies Commission is expected to confirm tomorrow what many people have suspected for a long time, that private car buyers in Britain are overcharged. Getting car prices back in line, an exclusive report next. Plus, the records of a record trial which ended today. And Mozambique's lost generation, children in search of their parents. That's in a couple of minutes.
If you suffer from catarrh or blocked sinuses, there's no such thing as a common cold. Mucron is a powerful decongestant. A single tablet will help clear your head and relieve sinus pain. Mucron, a decongestant for the uncommon cold.
Takes a lot to get me out of a warm bed. With so much equipment as standard, no wonder the 1992 Escort LX is a car you can get attached to.
The dear lady persuaded me to buy her a new frock. The assistant said, we don't have much for the chunkier person. The wife said, could she try on that frock in the window? If you like, she said, but you'll be less exposed in one of our cubicles. She'd never get a job at Swinton Insurance. They really know what service is about, with thousands of motor insurance experts ready with free advice. The dear lady looked a bit down. Would you like a night on the town tonight, I said. Oh, that's nice, she said. Well, don't be too laid back, pet, I said.
For your guide to great value, the new Argos catalogue is out now. Call free on 0800 611 600.
ITN has learnt that a report into European car prices by the Monopolies and Mergers Commission suggests that private buyers here are paying too much. The report, due to be published tomorrow, concludes that British prices should be brought into line with the lower prices charged on the continent.
Motor industry sources are calling it a tough report. After months of research, it concludes that the list price of cars in Europe are higher than they are in Britain. Copies of the document have been circulated to a few key figures ready for tomorrow's expected MMC report. I understand the core findings to be that restrictions on dealers should be relaxed to allow more competition between garages. The second recommendation is believed to be that the voluntary agreement to restrict Japanese car imports should be lifted to allow them to compete more on equal terms. The third is to call for list prices in the UK to be more in line with other European countries, where they're up to 30% cheaper. This morning, a deal was struck in North London. This man picked up his top-of-the-range Mazda 323, just imported from the Republic of Ireland. It's complete with power steering, electric windows and sunroof, with the latest ABS brakes. The price, £11,100. He still saved 18% on the cost of the same vehicle bought in Britain.
I've saved £2,000 and I thought it was quite worth going to a broker for that sort of saving.
Here's the same model in a franchised Mazda dealer in the UK. It's more than £13,000. It's an example of what the Monopolies and Mergers Commission has been investigating, why prices differ across Europe. Dealers admit there are big differences, but there are also reasons.
The price disparity is indeed very great, but you have to remember that we have 20 staff working here. We have a parts backup of £100,000. We have computer technology to look after these cars. If I could work from an office with a telephone and a fax and sell cars, I'm sure I could sell cars at £2,000 cheaper as well.
And the response from that man with the fax and telephone, he can complete a sale cheaper than the local dealer.
We can supply a new Golf GTI at considerably less than even the discounted price on the UK market, and we're able to get those. Delivery on those is maybe 4 to 6 weeks.
The government now has to decide whether to act on the Monopolies and Mergers report or accept that if you know where to go, this Mazda can be bought for £2,000 less than from franchise dealers. Stephen Cape, News at 10, North London.
British Aerospace was told today it could keep the £44 million it received from the government as an incentive to buy the Rover car group. The European Court of Justice ruled that the European Commission made procedural errors when it ordered British Aerospace to pay the money back. The court did not pass judgment on whether the payments were illegal.
An important trial ended at Nottingham Crown Court today, but it's not the verdict that's remarkable. At 17 months, it's Britain's longest trial. For the record, 5 defendants charged with commercial fraud will be sentenced later this week. The lawyers have been there so long, they've started up their own football and cricket teams.
This is where it started, on a 300-acre site in Derbyshire, which it was claimed would be the ultimate theme park. When it opened, 5 years and £9.5 million later, it was little more than a building site, with the public stumbling across the foundations of Britain's longest criminal trial. The fraud investigation was colossal and lasted almost 4 years. Police accumulated more than 4,500 exhibits, travelling the world to gather 500 statements from 400 witnesses.
Just to think of where is it housed, we had to take over a police station. We had to move officers out to accommodate the fraud squad. We had to buy mountains of filing cabinets.
In Nottingham, 2 courts had to be knocked into one to provide enough space. To save time sifting through paperwork, even the jury was given computers. For them, removed from their jobs, normal life was swept aside. One man ran his business at the weekends. Remarkably, only 1 juror dropped out. If another had gone, it would have meant a retrial. But what started as a court case became, for all but the defendants, a way of life, with cricket in the summer.
We managed to convene a team from the bar and the solicitors' representatives who were in court, which was proudly called the Britannia Park 11 after the case which we've been involved in. And although we had remarkably little success, we played 2 and lost 2 against the Derbyshire CID on summer evenings.
It's the sheer volume of evidence and the complexity of the case which led to a trial scheduled to last 6 months, running on for 17. As it heads for the Guinness Book of Records, it will have cost the taxpayer more than £5 million. Joan Thurkettle, News at 10, Derbyshire.
President Mitterrand of France called the decision to admit a suspected Palestinian terrorist for medical treatment an error of judgment. Several Foreign and Interior Ministry officials and the head of the French Red Cross resigned after George Habash was allowed into France briefly last week. In a live television interview tonight, Mr. Mitterrand described the affair over and challenged the opposition to censure his government. He also ruled out sacking any ministers or reshuffling his cabinet. Police in Hong Kong fired tear gas to keep refugees from North and South Vietnam apart tonight, hours after fighting in the detention centre led to the deaths of 21 refugees. 16 adults and 5 children were burned alive when their hut was set on fire. More than 100 people were injured. Extra police have been sent into the camps. British Army units are patrolling the perimeter. The Venezuelan government has suspended its constitution while operations continue to flush out rebels involved in last night's coup attempt. The rebels attacked the presidential palace in Caracas and targets in at least 4 other cities before government forces regained control.
Scientists are investigating claims that chemical weapons were used last month by right-wing rebels in Mozambique. The claims surfaced after a battle between government troops and Renamo rebels, the latest round in the country's 16-year civil war. The fighting has killed 1 million people and driven millions more from their homes. Many of those displaced are children. Aid workers are now trying to reunite them with their families.
In an orphanage near Nampula, the lost children of Mozambique sing in hope of a bright future. Just a handful of the 250,000 youngsters separated from their families during 16 years of civil war. The terrible conflict between the Marxist Frelimo government and Renamo, the resistance movement, has devastated Mozambique, tearing apart the country and its people. But amid the chaos of war, aid workers are trying desperately to reunite fragmented families. In Murapula province, still terrorized by guerrilla fighters, a team from the American Save the Children Fund tracked down a group of youngsters hiding in a house. The first task to photograph and document these children on the run from war. Like so many, they were captured by Renamo and trained as servants or young soldiers. Back at their headquarters, the relief workers print posters of the children in an effort to trace their families. Many of the youngsters are already deeply scarred by their experiences.
Some of the children are kidnapped, some of the children are taken, forced to work for long days, going to the base camps, where some of them are separated from their families, which brings lots of problems, psychological problems for these children. Others are trained and forced to kill. The result of this is that we see children who have severe traumatic problems.
Reuniting children with their parents offers the best chance of helping them overcome those traumas. The posters are distributed at village meetings across Mozambique in the hope that someone will recognize a name or a face. For 10-year-old França, the tracing program had worked. By chance, his father had spotted his photo on a poster. França solemnly bade farewell to his friends at Nampula Orphans' Home. The boy who'd been kidnapped by Renamo guerrillas as a 5-year-old was going home. By tragic irony, it turned out his parents were living in a refugee camp less than a mile away, unaware how close he was. Strangers for so long, they seemed stunned by the emotion of their boy's homecoming. Only the cries of joy broke the silence. França has been so traumatized by the past, he no longer speaks. Antonio said his heart was burning at the sight of the son he thought he'd never see again. The hour marked one more successful reunion. So far, over 5,000 children have been reunited with their families, a small but touching start to a monumental task. While celebrations greet each happy homecoming, the search goes on for Mozambique's lost generation. Jeremy Thompson, News at 10, Southern Africa.
Back home, tonight's soccer, 4th Division, Wrexham's giant killing is over for another season. West Ham's only goal put Wrexham out of the FA Cup in tonight's 4th round replay. Colin Foster got that header. In the 4th round, Notts County 2, Blackburn 1, Sheffield Wednesday 1, Middlesbrough 2. Barclays League Division 2, Portsmouth 4, Plymouth 1, Swindon 2, Bristol City 0. Division 4, Northampton 1, Aldershot 0. The Tennent's Scottish Cup 3rd round replay, Kilmarnock lost 4-3 on penalties against Meadowbank after extra time ended 1-1. Motherwell 4, Ayr United 1. B&Q Scottish League Division 2, Brechin 2, Stranraer 1. Clyde 6, Albion Rovers 2. East 5, 2, East Stirling 2. Stenhousemuir 1, Dumbarton 0.
And a reminder of tonight's top story. In Northern Ireland, a policeman aged 24 shot dead 3 men in the West Belfast press centre of Sinn Féin, then killed himself. The Irish President, Mrs Mary Robinson, was in Belfast at the time, and trade unionists were demonstrating against terrorism and intimidation.
That's News at 10 tonight. From Alistair and from me, good night.
Good evening. Well, it's still a case of high pressure in charge, keeping any real wintry weather at bay. There we see it down to the southwest. And what we have is a run of westerlies coming in from mid-Atlantic, and they're bringing in that warmer air. But obviously, cooling off as they come, but bringing in fairly good, reasonable temperatures, especially for early February. So we have another mild night in the offing with temperatures held at 7 or even 8 degrees, a cloudy night too, with a cloud attached to that old weather front in the very far north of Scotland, just thick enough to give off some rain, sleet or even snow. We also see some drizzle here out to the west. So we maintain this cloudy scene as we go into tomorrow, and the cloud, especially down the eastern fringe of the country, thin enough to allow some fairly good amounts of sunshine through from time to time. Basically, the further north and the further west you go, the cloudier it gets. There will be some light drizzle around tomorrow, mainly for coastal and hilly areas in the northwest and the far northwest there, and fairly prolonged rain from time to time for the Northern Isles. So as far as temperatures go, despite the fact there's very little sunshine around tomorrow, they're looking good, coming in at around about 8 or 11 degrees, just about touching the 50s. But when you add on a fairly fresh northwesterly wind, that of course will have a bearing on those temperatures, in turn making them feel just a touch chillier. Good night.
Good evening. A 10-year-old girl has been killed in West Somerset this afternoon as she got off a school bus. Police are appealing for witnesses to the accident at Bossington Lane near Porlock because no other vehicle was involved. It's believed she must have fallen beneath the vehicle. 40 people have been arrested in a major police operation in Plymouth early this morning. Police say they're determined to clean up the Devonport area of the city.
The ironically named Operation Embalm began just after 6 this morning. 80 police officers raided dozens of homes in the Mount Wise area, using sledgehammers to smash down doors before taking away scores of items they believe to have been stolen and making 40 arrests.
Well, the people here, the ordinary, decent, hard-working people in Mount Wise, have had a tremendous amount to put up with over the last 6 or 9 months. There's been a lot of criminal activity, a lot of antisocial activity, and part of our aim today is to try and restore some tranquility to the lives of the people who live here.
Some of those whose homes were entered say they're completely innocent and that the police were heavy-handed. The police are now cataloguing the vast amount of property they recovered this morning, and it's not clear how soon those involved will be charged.
An East Devon man who suffered extensive burns in a mystery car fire a fortnight ago has died from his injuries. 30-year-old Darrell Garner from Exmouth was found staggering along a nearby country lane near Woodbury Common. Detectives say the death of another man in a nearby car is unconnected. Truro MP Matthew Taylor is calling for a public investigation into the recent spate of thefts from constituency offices. Mr Taylor's own offices were broken into twice last year, and MPs from all parties have reported similar incidents.
In the run-up to what's been billed as the dirtiest general election campaign this century, the national newspapers have been full of stories concerning dirty tricks and smear campaigns. At the weekend, several MPs questioned the motives behind recent break-ins at their offices in the House of Commons and their constituency offices. Amongst them, Truro MP Matthew Taylor, whose own offices in Cornwall have been broken into twice in the last year. On the first occasion, 70 computer disks were stolen, whilst radios, computers and even cash were left behind. More recently, a drawer in the office containing constituency files had been broken into, though nothing was taken. Mr Taylor says he isn't certain who's behind the robberies, but fears they were looking for confidential general election party campaign strategies.
It must be suspicious, and I think what we need to see is a proper investigation to see if there are any connecting threads that can be tied together to track down who's doing it. In the meantime, I think politicians of all parties should be cautious and take necessary precautions to make sure material doesn't go astray.
The M5 in Somerset was closed to northbound traffic this afternoon following a pile-up. It happened at junction 26 near Wellington when a tipper lorry overturned, causing several other vehicles to crash. North Cornwall councillors have agreed to an independent inquiry into their planning procedures, but insist the government must pay for it. At a meeting tonight, they also agreed to strip the planning committee of some of its powers. The move follows a Channel 4 television documentary which was highly critical of the district's planners. A model's been revealed of the £28 million building work that's to be started next month at Taunton's Musgrove Park Hospital. The scheme should be completed in 3 years and includes a new outpatients department. A Commons committee has heard that there can be no guarantee that pensions will continue to be paid at the Penzance-based British International Helicopters following the death of its owner, Robert Maxwell. The helicopter company is now in administration and workers fear for their pension funds. Today they told the Commons Select Committee on Social Security that they fear their contributions will never be returned. Television personality and naturalist Johnny Morris has launched an £800,000 appeal to revamp a Somerset animal sanctuary. The Heaven's Gate Wildlife Sanctuary near Langport wants to improve facilities for both animals and visitor. There's one soccer result tonight in Division 2. Plymouth have lost away to Portsmouth tonight 4-1. Marker scoring an own goal. And that's the news tonight. Our next regional update will be at 5 to 10 in the morning. For me, for the moment, a very good evening.
Good evening. Well, more mild weather on the way and it's staying dry, so that can't be bad. Here's the chart for tomorrow, and we see once again high pressure knocking on the door just off the southwest coast down there. It's centred over the Bay of Biscay, and that's what's pushing those winds up around us, coming down across the West Country from the northwest. Let's see what sort of weather's lined up for us tonight. Very cloudy and the odd bit of drizzle around, particularly on higher ground and on those northwesterly facing coasts as those winds come in off the sea. The winds are still very brisk, up to force 5 or 6. Temperatures once again extremely mild tonight, between 7 and 9. And tomorrow, massive temperatures for the time of year, up to 11 or 12. That's up to 54 Fahrenheit along the south coast there. Slightly cooler, 10s, that's 50 in the north. Some sun too, winds dying down. Here's the outlook.
The return of the prodigal causes a rift in Coronation Street, Wednesday at 7:30.
If we'd have been responsible citizens, we'd have had a government health warning stamped on his head before he left the house.
Listen, you, less of the wise cracks. Get this place cleaned up. When I get back, I want everything in its place, and you in your suit.
My suit?
Yes. You might not be any good, Jack Duckworth, but even you can try and play the part, even if it's just for my sake.
At 8 o'clock, drama and a new series of investigations for that Dutch detective Van der Valk.
You want me officially to be operational?
All right, yes, I know. I heard you wanted the best of both worlds. Upstairs and on the street.
Why did you accept your last promotion?
What? Because I earned it. Commissaris Van der Valk, open the door, please, immediately.
And this is how Coronation Street and Van der Valk fit into your lineup of programmes for Wednesday evening here on TSW.
We put a lot into our new Dolmio frozen meals. Freshly made egg pasta, succulent meat, chunky vegetables, cheddar and parmesan, and Dolmio sauce with 2 types of tomatoes and a unique blend of herbs and spices. There's delicious lasagna, irresistible cannelloni, and tempting ravioli. New Dolmio frozen meals. Put the Dolmio smile on your face.
Strathans luxury coach tours are really going places. New for 92, Paris, including trips to the Euro Disneyland theme park. Phone Plymouth 794545 for your free Strathans brochure.
From Silkience comes a conditioner that actually makes your hair stronger from within. The unique bio-nourishing formula of Silkience penetrates and reinforces every hair with panthenol. Because when your hair is strong on the inside, it's beautiful on the outside. Silkience. Beauty through strength.
3 champions in 1 litter, and they all eat tender bites.
Top breeder Wendy Barrow talks about the way she feeds her dogs.
Well, I haven't used fresh meat for a long, long time. Pedigree chum tender bites is very appetizing. And it smells lovely as soon as they hear the dishes. Food, food. Tender bites, ma'am. It's meaty and it's very digestible. It's got all of the good things that I associate with pedigree chum.
Pedigree chum tender bites. Top breeders recommended.
When I grew up and fell in love,
I ask my sweetheart what lies ahead. Will we have rainbows day after day? Here's what my sweetheart said. Hey, Sarah, Sarah, whatever will be, will be. The future's not ours to see. Que sera.
You never know what your future holds, but at least with Pearl, you should be able to afford it when it happens. The future's yours with Pearl.
All year round, our cows are grazing to make anchor butter taste amazing. But look, here come the whirring blades to steal the green grass from our maids.
Anchor cows, there's nothing lower than a thieving little more. Now we've trapped them in the stream. We'll make butter that tastes supreme. Anchor butter, green, green grass.
Shaving's a pain, scraping and stripping the skin's moisture, which can leave it dry and sore. But now there's Old Spice Sensitive. A new gel protects against scraping, and a remarkable aftershave skin conditioner soothes by replacing lost moisture, making it look and feel great. So what's it to be? Sensitive or new Old Spice Sensitive? It takes the heat out of shaving.
In a moment, First Tuesday reports on the New York subway. But first of all, Night Call with Francis Boyle.
Hello. This peaceful scene is in Beer Ferrers in West Devon. But peace with ourselves can depend on peace with others. And peace can seem such a soggy word, we can wrongly take it to mean lying down and letting other people walk all over us. For me, peace with others is about turning the other cheek, but that isn't a very fashionable idea these days. Gun-toting, muscle-bound so-called heroes blast their way across our screens, all in some way hitting back, being violently active instead of peacefully passive. But turning the other cheek isn't passive. You have to actively turn your head and say, put it there, especially when we could hit back. But a lot of our hitting back is about salvaging our pride. Our lack of self-worth won't allow us to let the other person off. And actually, in the end, we sink down to their level. But for me, the answer to peace with ourselves and with the others is about realising that both of us are of equal value. See you tomorrow.
Now it's time for First Tuesday. Tonight the programme goes underground. In fact, it goes to Subway City.